The crisis in Egypt at a turning point. We watched a fear seem to become a reality today. The pitched battles breaking out in the streets of Cairo between those who support the regime of the embattled President Hosni Mubarak and those who want him to leave now. A day of dramatic images, demonstrators riding in on horses and camels. They used shards of sidewalk as deadly weapons. The city engulfed in fire, and our team is on the ground tonight. Christian Amanpour there with David Murin. As you know, Christian has been covering the Middle East for 2 decades. Tell us about what happened today, Christian.
Well, good evening, Diane. It seemed the battle lines had been redrawn today. Now that President Mubarak says that he will stand down before the next elections, now his supporters storming the protesters against him in what has become the world stage of Liberation Square. By the end of the day, this was a fight not just for territory, but for the political high ground. And the protesters remained in control of that square. Now the stakes are raising even further as the army, which has been neutral, is now telling the protesters to leave that square and to go home. And David, you were there all day today.
Yeah, and I was telling you earlier, Christian, how extraordinary it was to be in that square, almost medieval in a sense, as those men came in riding on horses and on camels, carrying whips. And we know tonight the death toll stands at least 3, hundreds more wounded.
What had been simmering anger here now burns in full view as demonstrators, this time for Mubarak, showed up to take on the protesters, launching molotov cocktails in Tahrir Square, both sides hurling chunks of concrete and bottles, some running for cover as ambulances raced in to help the scores of wounded. It was an extraordinary turning point that came out of nowhere as thousands in favor of Mubarak marched up the Nile, determined to take the square back. In stunning form on horseback and on camel, charging into the crowd carrying whips, taking aim at the very protesters who for days now have been demanding Egypt's president step down. A nearby mosque instantly turned into a trauma ward, and tonight the number of wounded is in the hundreds. The tension here had been building from the moment we arrived at the square this morning. Before we even got in, we heard and saw something very different. People angered that Mubarak has been forced to step down.
You want him to stay?
Because Egypt can be destroyed. We didn't do this. Okay?
The crowd demands to know what's happened to Egypt.
We love Mubarak.
While just inside the entrance, we hear the opposite, that Mubarak isn't leaving soon enough.
When he says he'll leave in September, is that enough?
No, because I can't trust him for the night.
The chaos slowly spreading through the crowd. A stranger approaching this young woman who's been so vocal on Facebook and Twitter, demanding to know why she'd been speaking out.
They recognize your face.
And by then, word had spread that those Mubarak supporters, thousands moving up the Nile, were chanting Misha Yimshi. He's not leaving.
The situation here in Tahrir Square turning even more tense. You can see the thousands of anti-Mubarak demonstrators who've been here for days. They're still here, but what they're now aware of are the thousands of pro-Mubarak demonstrators who have gathered along the Nile and who have begun to enter the square along the fringe. And we have begun to see, as you can see right here in front of us, what happens when the two sides clash.
A group of men carrying a man they'd just beaten, and we soon learn why. Because that image that's now played out worldwide had begun on the other side of the square, those horses barreling into the crowd fighting back, pulling the men off the horses and beating them right in front of us, convinced those men had been sent in by Mubarak.
Are still convinced of that tonight. Now, the Army did not act during all of this except to fire warning shots into the air. We were there for that. And Christiane, as you know, our crew was able to get out of the square by finding a small alleyway, hiding our microphones and all of our equipment so as to not signal that we were journalists.
Precisely, because now they have really taken it out on the press. They're blaming the press, those pro-Mubarak supporters, for all their woes. And they were very menacing. They told us not to go in when we tried to go in this afternoon, or take our destiny in your own hands, they warned.
We had American, we had any country more. Okay, go to any place more.
You want us to go?
Yes, I want you go to from here.
Why?
Because we are hate you. We hate American.
You hate us?
Yes, I hate you and I hate you.
Why do you hate us?
You are not good person. Go to any place more, please. Go to any place more. You are
not with us.
Okay.
You are not with us.
Okay.
We want Mubarak. We want Mubarak. We want We want.
Okay.
May I have a word?
No, not right now. We left that angry crowd and got into our car. They forced us into our car. And as we started to drive off, they hit the car with their fists over and over again and threw a rock through the front window. The glass is shattered all over our driver. Are you okay? Did they hurt you?
No.
Waggy?
No.
Did they hit you?
No.
It is very unpredictable out there, I know, Christian, but tell me what you know about tomorrow. Any Twitter, any social media indications when they're going to gather? How?
Well, it looks like resolve is stiffening amongst the protesters, no matter the concessions that the president has made. And they're saying they're really planning on yet another million or so person march for Friday after prayers, Diane.